In the sports world, most people pick the reigning champs to repeat the following year. In the case of Richard Petty and the 1979 NASCAR title, and the fact it was his record 7th, why wouldn't anyone pick him to win number 8 in 1980? I don't know about you, but I remember where I was at when the direction of my life was formed, Michigan International Speedway, on August 23, 1974, when I saw Richard Petty's fire red and petty blue Dodge go screaming by. Since then, probably just like you, we've been hooked. From our first media gig at the tender age of 15 in 1983 with Grand National Scene, to printing our own Supercars Today magazine in the 1990s, hence our name. Nothing against our open wheel friends, but if it has fenders, our nosy nature wants to find out the who, the why, and the how. We don't necessarily interview these people, we have conversations. So please subscribe to our channel and hit that bell to be notified of new content every Tuesday at noon. Thanks for watching, and please like, comment on, and share these videos. Today on the program, coming off the 1978 season they had, and Richard's surgery, 1979 surely didn't start out all that promising looking, but that changed quickly by Ontario, and it could be considered one of the greatest comebacks in sports history. It led to a comic book, more marketing gimmicks, and even a berth in the 1980 Clash for pole winners at Daytona to start NASCAR's 10th anniversary celebration of their successful union with Winston. If I won the points championship for the 8th time, I probably wouldn't run for it again, said Richard. No, I don't think STP would have anything to say about it. Right now they put up the money for us, and we run the schedule the way we want. At Riverside, to start the season, he finished 3rd and led 13 laps to set 3rd in points. Maybe this was a harbinger of things to come on the season, just the plain weirdness of the situation, but Anheuser-Busch sent the King to New York for press junkets at the same exact time the drawing for the Clash was taking place. I told them I was up there working for y'all. I still should be able to draw for a position, lamented Richard. Nope. They even sent Papa Lee, a 3-time champ, in his place. He'd have to start last. But in typical King style, he joked, I probably would have drawn 12th last anyway. It was won by an upstart driver, one Dale Earnhardt. But at least Richard can say he can start first somewhere in the 1980 season, drawing the number 1 spot to qualify for the 125s. And then he nearly won it, crossing the line right on winner Donnie Allison's bumper, which means he'd start the 504th. Being caught up in a crash not of his doing in the second 125, Kyle wouldn't make the 500, but Richard and Dale were there plenty quick to render aid. Sure didn't take my dad long to get to where I was. Rolling off 4th for the 500, Richard's Olds was fast, and even caught the field 1 lap down on an early round of pit stops. Now pole sitter Buddy Baker dominated all day and won the fastest 500-mile race in history at that time. The King was in that lead draft the entire way, and in contention, and led 4 circuits early on. Unfortunately, on the next to last stop, Dale Inman had his foot run over by Neil Bonnet while changing tires, and then trying to avoid other cars pitting, Richard slipped the clutch, heated it up, and it put them out of the race. Baker would win his only 500, and Richard wound up 25th, completing 157 laps. But the 43 team wasn't the only title contender to have 500 issues, as Cale Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip, and Dale Earnhardt, who had just taken the point lead, all had problems that took them out of the running. Perhaps smiling because he was sitting 3rd in points, the King shares a laugh with Darrell and car owner Bud Moore. However, it wasn't funny when Waltrip spun the King while fighting for position on lap 268. Both recovered, Darrell would go on to win, and Petty placed 3rd. I want to apologize to Richard. It was my fault. After a snowstorm delayed it a week, Rockingham ran March 9th, but the day before, the Petty crew won the Union 76 Pit Crew competition with a time of 17.089 seconds. During the race, Richard led 39 laps, finished second to winner Yarborough, and rose to second in points, 52 behind leader Earnhardt. At Atlanta for race number 5, it was the debut of Kyle's Lollipop Gang, but it was also the first engine failure the King had in 55 events. Still, he led 3 laps to help in the points, but placed 33rd and fell to 4th in the standings as point leader Dale Earnhardt won. While point leader Dale Earnhardt was winning his second event in a row at Bristol, Petty was handing over his number 43 to Richard Childress when he was hit with leg cramps, falling further behind in the standings. That didn't take long. Darlington, lap 1, crash, but not a Petty's doing. But not exactly a recipe for repeating as champ either, until the point leader drops out and finishes 29th, and you soldier on to 9th. Richard was now only 144 back. At Martinsville, as a cost-cutting measure, NASCAR decided to implement a new rule on short tracks where you could only change tires under green. So what does point leader Dale Earnhardt do at the start? He goes down into turn 1 and wrecks about 10 cars, including Richard. But the King soldiered on, led 72 laps, and was in position to win. While Dale placed 13th, Richard chopped the margin down to 63 points. Back in 1980, NASCAR had 3 legs to the point title, and at the end of Talladega, Earnhardt took that $10,000 prize of the first leg after losing by inches at the checkers to Buddy Baker while Richard blew up. By the way, Dale was in the engine bay here, wasn't he? Anyhow, Richard didn't lead, placed 31st, and was now 168 behind, but still 3rd. 3 DNFs in 10 races. Gonna have to do better than that if you want to defend your title. Well, the crew stepped up. The King led 96 of 420 laps, and they won at Nashville. Despite the tire rule, which Richard said of, I'm not sold on it. It confuses me. It has to be confusing to the fans who's running where. Earnhardt finished 6th, and the deficit was now down to 143. Another gain day, as Earnhardt finished 10th at Dover Downs. Richard led 11 laps and finished right behind winner Bobby Allison, moving the King back to 2nd in the standings, 102 behind. Oh boy, what a day at the home track of Charlotte. Rain. Earnhardt wrecked on Saturday and on Sunday. Benny Parsons and Waltrip swapped the lead back and forth multiple times in the last handful of laps until Benny prevailed, and the King finished 4th after leading 3 circuits. It moved him to within 45 of leader Dale Sr. After that Charlotte race, Earnhardt's crew chief, Jake Elder, left. Imploding? Oh boy. The 2-race swing took the circuit to Texas as, well, car owner Bud Moore escaped the dreaded Dale Inman elbow lock. Cale won, and again the King finished 2nd, despite no laps led. Earnhardt placed 9th, and Richard was a mere 18 behind. For the first time since Talladega, point leader Earnhardt placed in front of Richard, 5th to the King's 8th at Riverside. Waltrip won, and now Petty was 36 back. In a 31-race schedule, would the 16th race be Midway? We guess. Anyway, Richard gained another top 5, finishing 5th at Michigan, while Earnhardt ran 12th, shrinking the lead to 13, and Kyle had his best finish in 7th, 1 lap down. As Lou Brown in Major League said, it's starting to come together. With his birthday July 2nd, the King always celebrates it in Daytona, and this time it was number 43, and it would also be his 300th Superspeedway start. But missing was Dad Leeboy, due to being under the weather, and Kyle awaiting the birth of Richard and Linda's first grandchild. Darrell and Cale DNF'd. Petty finished 5th, but Dale placed 3rd, and again didn't lead, so the points margin was back up to 28th, with the King still in second. On his time off, if you can call it that, the King went to Laguna Seca and ran a NASCAR West event, placing 17th, and on July 10th, Adam Kyler Petty was introduced into the world. Notice the STP stickers on the wagon? Back to the Music City, and another 5th for the King. But at least he brought the drought to an end by leading 17 laps. However, Earnhardt won, and for the 3rd race in a row, the point lead grew, but ever so slightly. Probably a date most old-school Petty fans won't forget is July 27, 1980. The STP Chevy started 3rd, continuing a month full of good things. Richard had already led, but on lap 57 had just passed for the top spot again. And to show how racing fates can change in a literal split second, the King was smashing into Pocono's turn 2 wall. He reportedly radioed crew chief Dale Inman and said, "I think I broke my neck." Is this the point where it all began to unravel? Ironically, point leader Dale Earnhardt crashed in the same turn the year before, but he sat out 4 races. The biggest, baddest, fastest track on the circuit, Talladega, and your driver has just, according to official reports, pulled his neck muscles. Thankfully, Richard was a good sport about it, holding his arms straight out and saying "grrr" when folks saw his neck brace, doing his best Frankenstein imitation, but the pain had to be horrible. So they tapped Joe Milliken from down the street from the shop to relief drive. So on the green and yellow flags for rain, Richard climbed out and Milliken stepped in, and he kept the 43 in the hunt and even led 5 laps. But with less than 40 laps to go, the engine expired and they were out, placing 18th. On a happier note, it was the public debut of Adam Petty at the racetrack. Point leader Dale Earnhardt finished 3rd and the margin grew to 200. "I probably should have let Joe take over. My neck is killing me," explained the King. But he'd just driven to a 5th-place finish at Michigan. Earnhardt DNF'd, so his lead was back down to 103, with Richard in 3rd behind Cale Yarborough. Was there a chance? They came back from a bigger margin to win it all in 1979. Well, not if Yarborough had something to say about it, who won Bristol. Earnhardt finished 2nd, and with relief help from Joe, Richard finished 4th, even leading 10 laps. Ooh, here comes Darlington, the track too tough to tame. And just ask Earnhardt, Pearson, and Parsons, who famously crashed with 3 laps to go, handing the win to Terry Labonte. Again with relief help from Milliken, the King placed 9th and led 2 laps. Earnhardt placed 7th, and Cale and Darrell had problems and did not finish, keeping the 43 in the hunt, only 121 points out of the lead. Even after all this, there's still a chance. You're telling me there's a chance? Bobby Allison won race number 24 at Richmond, but the King was the story, who finished 2nd right on Allison's tailpipe. He had led 2 laps and is back in 2nd in points, only 111 behind Earnhardt, who placed 4th. Bobby outran me all day, so I was satisfied to run that close, stated Richard. It was the hot high banks of Dover down next, and you better believe Richard was wearing that neck brace, which he didn't at Richmond, and had help from Milliken again. They blew up with less than 35 laps to go, but Dale was out early also, ending up 34th, and his margin was now only 60. The 43 team was still in it. What a mess, that North Wilkesboro asphalt. It was so bad, the King offered to take NASCAR President Bill France Jr. for a ride during the race, but he declined. Going for the lead, Richard crashed, taking himself out of contention, and was now 3rd in points, 106 back, as Earnhardt placed 5th. It can probably be looked back on that race where the wheels came off their season. Martinsville, they fell to 4th after engine failure and a late race exit. Same at Charlotte, and Earnhardt won both of those. Yarborough was now coming on. To make matters worse at Rockingham, Joe, driving for another team, crashed with Richard. They both DNF'd. To end the season at Atlanta in Ontario, they finished with 2 more engine failures and a 406-point deficit, and a 4th-place finish in the standings, which the King never led. But he did get his closest at 13 at Michigan in June. Perhaps the debate could be, did Petty lose it or did Dale win it? The year did end on a good note, as Richard, Kyle, and the team secured sponsorship from STP for a lifetime, or, 25 years, and then Richard went out and won the pole and the race at Phoenix, a NASCAR West race. So tell us what you think. Did Richard lose it or did Dale win it? Please comment below and hit that like and share button. Thanks for listening.